5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This week on the field, diversity and adversity.
We'll be looking at the obstacles students face and their struggles to overcome them.
International students come to Fredericton with the promise of the Canadian dream, but when they have to work 40 hours a week or take out GoFundMe pages in order to graduate, are they actually experiencing the Canadian nightmare?
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada.
Immigration reductions and visa caps have sent a clear message to international students. Has Canada's reputation as a welcoming destination taken a permanent hit?
Yeah, so we certainly saw fewer new international students join us in September, probably down about 20%.
And Indigenous students can face more than just culture shock when they arrive on campus. With funding tied to grade point averages, the need to succeed is more than academic.
But the fact that you have to pay back that money kind of helped me keep my head on straight and my goals straight, just to keep working harder. And that's not always the best thing to do because it might not be good for your mental health.
Live from Studio 309, we'll be bringing you those stories and much more. I'm Jennifer William.
And I'm Wilfred Fraser. Welcome to The Field. So, Jennifer, there's been a lot of big news events this fall. The American election, and closer to home, the provincial vote that brought us New Brunswick's first woman premier. I'd practically forgotten that it was only last month that Canada announced it was expelling 6 Indian diplomats.
And the reason was explosive. Canada accused the Modi government not only of plotting to kill a Sikh activist, but threatening to assassinate more members of the Sikh community in Canada.
So, I guess the question is, what does this really mean for more than 100,000 Indian students who attend university or college here in Canada? Let's hear your report, Jennifer.
RCMP evidence, which concluded 6 agents of the Government of India are persons of interest in criminal activities.
Marilyn Almeida came to Canada for university in the hopes of finding a stable career and maybe staying and making it her home. But with relations between her native country and Canada worsening, she started questioning her decision.
Think about other family members moving here or something like that, they'd be pretty wary about it. But, now that I'm already here, I know my parents back at home are worried about the situation and how this might affect me. And since I'm here by myself and they can't be here to support me, it's definitely put a strain on a lot of people's minds.
Even in Fredericton, Indian students are talking amongst themselves about the growing tensions, especially in big cities. They hear stories about how some Canadians aren't renting out apartments to anyone that looks South Asian. With the growing increase of students from the subcontinent, they fear that those problems might end up here.
I think maybe your average white Canadian doesn't have a particular personal connection to the story, but it's going to be very difficult. The Modi government seems to be quite stubborn on this issue, and they're not willing to cooperate with the Canadian government's investigation of what happened. It's very difficult to work with them because we're coming from a position where we care about the lives of our citizens, but the Modi government is allegedly killing our citizens.
Dr. Sean Narayan teaches international relations at St. Thomas. He thinks students don't have to worry about this.
I'm not concerned about that at all. A great deal more would have to happen before Canadians as a whole started attacking Indians because, their relations with the country, with Canada, aren't that good.
And for now, Indian students have bigger concerns, like making it through the end of the term. Reporting from the field, I'm Jennifer William.
Thanks for that, Jennifer.
Many international students come to St. Thomas on academic scholarships, but in order to stay here, they often have to work multiple jobs, and that can take a toll. Rafaela Ortega reports.
Maria Jose Anaya works here at the study hall, at the Residence Life office, and at Starbucks every day from 5 a.m. to 10. The international student from Colombia needs the money to survive, but it's also meant she ended up losing the original reason she came to St. Thomas. A scholarship.
Of course, it's overwhelming, and sometimes it can be too much, and there's times in which, even more when I'm alone and when, you have time to think a little bit about the day or about how you're feeling and actually, hear your body or hear your mind, and yeah, it can get tough sometimes.
Even with a scholarship, tuition for international students is high, as much as $21,000 a school year. And while many might think students from outside Canada are from wealthy families, that's not true at most. Even though Alberto Chaves works 40 hours a week, when he lost his scholarship and couldn't afford university on his own, he had to start a GoFundMe page or drop out and go back to Ecuador.
My sister told me I had to do a GoFundMe. If I'm being honest with you, that was like a very scary moment for me, because it was not only being vulnerable, not only to my friends, but virtually every person I have known to know my situation, where I stand at, how my family was doing, the hardship I was facing. It was I remember I was crying when we posted things, because I didn't know if I was like worth the money.
Alberto ended up getting enough money so he can finish his 4th year. And Maria José says he's working hard to win back her scholarship to help with the final 2 years of a degree in economics. Still, it's not like the idea of giving up and going home has never crossed her mind.
I do think a lot about home. I miss my family a lot. And I also do it for them because they have worked so hard. And I want to be able to give back at some point. But yeah, it gets hard.
Both Maria José and Alberto say while university personnel have been very helpful, there is something wrong when students are lured to Canada with scholarships and then set up to fail when it comes to paying the bill. Reporting from the field, I'm Rafael Ortega.
Thanks, Rafa. In the last year, the federal government has made it clear that it's backpedaling on immigration levels in the country, and that message is making some in the international student community anxious.
Ryan Sullivan has been in the recruitment business for well over a decade and now oversees enrollment at St. Thomas. Wilfred had a chance to sit down with him in his big office in that teeny tiny building on campus.
The field report. From what you're hearing, have international students been getting a message that Canada isn't quite as open to them and their aspirations as maybe it was back in 2015?
That's a good question. I think I'll answer it from two perspectives. One from prospective students, and then the other for current students. Certainly from a prospective student, a perspective of a potential student globally right now. I think the message has certainly been received from students that Canada is tweaking their immigration practices and policies. Interestingly, though, the Australians and the British are implementing similar policies. So in some respects, that's kind of helped us, because yes, students are receiving a message that perhaps Canada is not as open as it was previously, that the growth that we've experienced has been significant and perhaps a little too aggressive and too much. So application numbers are trending downwards, not only at St. Thomas University, but I just came from a conference in Ottawa with colleagues from across Canada, and everyone is suggesting the same, that they're seeing applications, a decline in applications for this year, for September 2025. And then from the current student perspective, there have been more recent announcements around changes to postgraduate work permits that is essentially treating college students and university students a little differently. So for our students here at St. Thomas, in fact, there hasn't been significant changes to their options if they are wanting to stay and live and work in New Brunswick after they graduate. But for some in the college system, depending on the program they're in, they will find it more challenging to stay in the country after they graduate. And so if they were here for an immigration pathway, they might certainly be finding it limiting.
Has your message to potential students had to change?
Yeah, so as an example of that, like previously we were not involved at all in assisting students with the immigration process, but we've partnered with a Canadian company called Border Pass that will assist our new students with immigration processing. They'll do a screening to determine the likelihood of a student getting a study permit, and then should they want to, they can use that service to facilitate their application for a study permit. That was not something that we did previously. We've also done a lot of work on the front end as well, as we're talking to prospective students, so that they know that there'll be a process to go through that's a little bit more extensive than it was previously. So if they have an older sibling that came through earlier, that they would know that, okay, things are a little different this time. and making sure that they're prepped and ready, and knowing that we're here to help, but they'll still have to go through and manage that process.
With a lot of student population being like BIPOC and international students, and you yourself being a recruiter, what are the ways that you continue to appeal to international students despite potentially unstable current relations?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think largely I'll even point to our current students and the word of mouth that they provide and their experiences here. In fact, I had this conversation with a student not too long ago who was saying, you know, with everything that's happening in Canada right now, they're not sure if they would actually be here other than if they were still at home and considering coming to Canada. But now that they're here, even with all the changes that are happening, they're talking to their families back home and saying, no, it's, you know, it's a great place to be, it's safe, it's welcoming. They have not really experienced any difference in their time here, and so that word of mouth going back home to their friends, their family, has certainly been helpful in making sure that people know, especially here at St. Thomas University and in Fredericton, that it is it's still a great destination.
As you were just discussing with Ryan Sullivan, it's getting tougher to come to Canada. Earlier this fall, the federal government announced further immigration reductions, a drastic change for a country that has trumpeted its openness to newcomers. That comes on top of caps put on student visas for international students. All of this is making students question their future in Canada. Catherine Del Salto reports.
We are announcing further measures, specifically, importantly, with respect to international students, and a few other ones that I will go through here shortly.
Alegria La Parra is in her graduating year at St. Thomas University. As violence escalated at home in Ecuador, she started thinking about staying in Canada by applying to become a permanent resident. But the news of the last year has her reconsidering that Canadian dream.
If Canada doesn't want me here, like if they're gonna make it that hard, then I'm not staying somewhere that I'm not wanted.
Here in St. Thomas, international students represent about 11% of total enrollment. The university says they're still unsure how recent changes in immigrations will be making a difference long term. But there was a 20% drop in international enrollment this school year. The university has been increasing bursaries and scholarships to offset this, but that can only go so far.
There's concern, of course. I haven't had anyone who's been deterred from wanting to remain in Canada, but just having questions and needing more reassurance, really. And, you know, what does this really look like? What does this really mean?
Today, I'm proud to announce the creation of a pathway to permanent residence for up to 90,000 essential workers.
Soon after the COVID-19 pandemic, the Trudeau Liberals made it easier for students like Dominica Sanchez to stay. After graduating from student criminology, she found employment in the social work field. But recently, she had second thoughts. And it's not just because of immigration issues.
I realized that life here is like really expensive, like getting groceries and like trying to keep up with rent is like really like difficult, and like people that are like having like minimum wage job, it's like are looking for like sometimes they have to have like floor jobs to be able to like just to like buy the essentials. And it's like really hard because we came here thinking that life will get easier, but instead we got into like another difficult life.
In the end, Sanchez decided to stay. She has established too many roots here. Still, many international students who once thought Canada presented a new beginning now worry that that dream is coming to an end. Reporting from the field, I'm Catherine Del Santo.
Thanks to Catherine for that. This fall,
For the first time, a woman played in the Atlantic Football League, a club league for 18 to 24-year-olds who attend university. And as our reporter, Ava Correa, found out, she had to overcome more than just gender stereotypes.
When Ella Lord was playing in a women's football league last summer, she reached out to her coach to find out if there was any possibility of trying out for the UNB Red Bombers. There was. She practiced with the team through preseason, and once the leaves began to fall, Ella was suited in red and black, standing on Chapman Field.
The first game was huge because I was super nervous going into it. But once I got out there for my first play, like it was kind of surreal.
But nothing came easily. She felt to be at a disadvantage because the boys started training much younger and have programs to train year-round. While Lord understands why attentions were focused on the fact that she's a woman playing a key position in high-level football, she felt that often it overshadowed what she was doing on the field, which was more than holding her own.
Definitely moments where you feel like you have to work harder than other people, which obviously is kind of discouraging. But I always kind of felt like, okay, well, if I've been working harder, I can keep doing it, and I'm never really gonna stop.
Lord initially hit the field in grade 9, but her interest in football began when she started watching her brothers play while growing up. That's why she was thrilled when she lined up across from her brother Ethan last month, a wide receiver for the Dalhousie Tigers.
I've been watching him play for a really long time. He's kind of like how I got into football, and I've been watching him play before I started and since, and just being on the field at the same time, it was super cool, and getting to shake his hand at the end of the game was awesome.
Reporting from the field, I'm Ava Correa.
Until a generation ago, not a lot of Indigenous students attended university. That's changed, but many barriers remain, and not just cultural and geographic. There can be huge academic pressure to keep up marks in order to maintain funding. Frey Blake Pugie reports.
When the Honorable Grady Nicholas went to university in 1964, he only received a $10 living allowance from the Tobic First Nation. He then went on to become the first person from a First Nation in Atlantic Canada to receive a law degree.
Well, I first started university in the fall of 1964 to 1968. I was attending St. Francis Xavier University in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. And so as a student, there were not too many of us on campus at the time. There were more students from Nova Scotia. And a lot of the Mi'kmaq students from Nova Scotia actually had attended residential school in Shubenacadie.
The Federal Department of Indigenous Affairs gives funds to Indigenous communities in Canada, with some of that money going towards a college or university education. Indigenous students usually have their tuition or residence fees paid for, including a living allowance. But to maintain that, students must maintain an average between 2.7 and 3.0.
There was a couple points in my time at St. Thomas where I certainly did feel a lot of pressure, either from like close loss in the family or like repeated concussions that have like impeded my growth as a student, and it made me rethink my decision to be in school and consider having all that pressure on my back while dealing with external things happening in my life. But the fact that like you have to pay back that money kind of helped me keep my head on straight and my goals straight, just to keep working harder. And that's not always the best thing to do because it may not be good for your mental health, but it's better than being in an extreme amount of debt.
St. Thomas's commitment to its Indigenous students goes beyond slogans. The Wabanaki Center here on campus is a place for students to connect with the community, whether it's with craft making workshops or counseling. And it's kind of cool that St. Thomas has a chancellor that is from a First Nation.
If you're thinking seriously of dropping out, come and see me. We'll talk. Go for a cup of coffee or something and find out what the issues are and see what can be done.
Reporting from the field, I'm Frey Blake Pugie.
Thanks, Frey. That's just one of the many insightful stories we learned about today. And I think it's important to hear them because sometimes we all get so wrapped up in our own struggles just to make it through the end of the term that we don't have an idea of what's going on around us.
Every student struggles, but we all have the same goal. A lot of us joke about just being in it for the piece of paper, but sometimes we forget just how important that degree is for those who have so much more to overcome.
For the field, I'm Jennifer William.
And I'm Wilfred Fraser. But before we let you go,
here are some of our own struggles.
Okay, shut up. Okay, shut up. Well, I'm actually so bad at advice.
But try not to laugh, right? Because it's gonna be like, oh, because immigration and go to you and
Yeah,
you're like,
they're hating me.
Just, the person had just come from lunch and they had absolutely terrible garlic breath.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, right, you know, he's like getting right up and he's like trying to get the mic and through, and I was like, oh my God.